number one source, Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 391 as we move towards 400, and we'll be doing something special for 400. I don't know exactly what, but some sort of giveaway, and who knows what. We got a little time to figure that out, but we'll do something. As always, let me start out by thanking our sponsors of this program in no particular order: Iron Sports Cards, Sports Collectors Digest, Hobby Hotline, Upper Deck, and Card Ladder. I've known the folks at Card Ladder a while. They sort of were a pseudo sponsor, but we've made it official now. And as part of that package, we'll be giving away some memberships to Card Ladder in the future here. So stay tuned for that. But very happy to have them officially, air quotes, aboard. Best analytics tool the hobby has, and I use it, and I appreciate them being part of the show. Speaking of part of the show, we have alumnus returning to the podcast on this week's and next week's episode. They were here 4 years ago, father and son, Zach and Porter Byrne. And last time we had him on, Zach was 9. He's now 13. Sounds older because he is more mature, getting ready for high school next year. And these two guys ooze hobby community. They're great examples of enjoying the hobby at any level. They have a great YouTube channel where they share some of the stuff they've acquired or send out or receive. And, really, I got to meet him in person a few years ago, and just good people, right? And hobby is full of them. These are just two great examples of that. So they are back after 4 years. We're going to catch up, see what's happened over the last 4 years, and I think you'll find the conversation interesting. This is obviously part 1, and part 2 will be next week. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, real excited to talk to the next two gentlemen on the Sports Card Nation guest line. They are alumnus of this show already, but it's been 4 years since they've been on. I figured it's about time to catch up. And so without further ado, back again, Zach and Porter Byrne. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey, John, thank you.
Thank you.
It's good to be back. Yeah, 4 years. That just flew by, huh?
Yeah, it's crazy. When I looked at that, Zach, and seen that, I'm like, it doesn't feel like it. Like it does and it doesn't at the same time, if that makes any sense. And I'm like, I got to catch up. You're not going to find two nicer folks in the hobby. You guys sort of epitomize what I love about the hobby. So I figured 4 years, way too long. Let's bring you back. Porter's now older than me since I stopped counting birthdays, but I'm kidding. But Porter, what grade are you in now, and how old are you since the last time we spoke, at least on the airwaves?
Yeah, so I'm going to be turning 13. Well, actually, by the time this would drop, I did turn 13. And next school year, I will be going into 8th grade.
Yeah, middle schooler.
Yeah, and then the big high school coming up. Man, time flies. We must be having fun. So let's start off there. Like I said, it's been 4 years since you guys have been on. You guys are still active in the hobby. I'm still hanging on by a thread. For you guys, what's happened the last 4 years? A synopsis since the last time you've been on.
Yeah, it's interesting. The last time we were on, I think you were having us as a father-son collectors. Myself, I got back into it during COVID, right? We lasted this in 2022, and our buddy Bo Thompson over at 1 Million Cubs, he joked there were a lot of people that came in during that boom. And I said at the beginning of last podcast, I said, we're here to stay. And it was true, right? 4 years later, we still collect very similarly to when we first got in. We're low budget collectors. We love this hobby community. In fact, one of the ways that we got to learn a lot about the hobby, because when you take 30 years off from collecting and then you got a young man who's coming into the hobby, it can be intimidating. I think we've talked about that, right? Okay,
listen, it can be intimidating for adults.
Yeah.
And kids alike. So yeah, no, I get that. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, and so listening to Sports Card Nation, leaning on other people that were in the hobby, we really started to get collecting. Porter was first, and then I jumped in a little bit later. Yeah. But we just absolutely have, we've made more friends, but we still kind of collect the same, and we have the same, I would just say, positive outlook on, I don't care what your budget is, how old you are, you can find a way to hobby in this great community.
Yeah. So what's changed? I feel like my collection, obviously it's grown a bit. I've expanded my likings and collecting habits. At shows, I've started dipping into the more quality than quantity stage a little bit. But I'm still usually just going through bargain boxes and finding out nice singles that I would like to have. We have since moved house, and this is our new card room.
Yeah,
this is exciting.
John, this is actually great timing because we actually turned off. We trade a lot on TCDB, Trading Card Database. If you're new to collecting, highly recommend it, just for the checklist, but also just the ability to trade and learn about all the cards that you didn't know existed. But we took a little bit of a hiatus from that because a lot of our collection was in boxes because we had this longer move delay. And where we are right now is in our new card room, and it's like we got a shot in the arm. We are running back into the hobby full steam. We were still picking up cards, but just not doing as many trades. We dropped usually about 2-3 videos a week on our YouTube channel, and we took a couple weeks off, and we're just excited to be back. So this was perfect timing for us to kind of say, like, yep, let's timestamp 2022 when we first talked, and here we are in 2026 ready to go.
Yeah.
So did you, not to be nosy, you don't have to, you can be as vague as you want to. Are you in a different city or same city, just different house?
Good question. Nope, same city, just closer to where Porter goes to school. And we had the opportunity to move to a place a little bit geographically where we wanted to be. I guess I can break this fourth wall down. Our old house, we never had a trick-or-treater. We were very, very rural. It was a long gravel road, and then you got to a 55-mile-an-hour highway. We wanted to give Porter the opportunity to hop on a bike. There's not a card shop within biking distance, but be able to ride downtown, see friends in the neighborhood, so that way he could have that really rural life and then a little bit of a kind of a city life. So yeah. I mean, it's the best of both worlds for him. He doesn't have to lose any friends. He's not changing schools, but he gets to. So it's painless for him.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Like as a kid that had to change school a few times, that's always daunting for young individuals. So it's good to hear, Porter, you didn't have to make new friends necessarily. I mean, you can always make new friends in school.
Yeah.
But you didn't have to make all new friends at a different school where you didn't know anybody. That can always be tricky and nerve-wracking time as someone, like I said, who's done it a few times. But now you didn't. And speaking of trick-or-treaters, Zach, I'm the opposite reason. I don't get trick-or-treaters at my house either, but for the opposite reason. I live on a very busy, main, I don't want to say highway, but it's a main thoroughfare. And so it's a busy street. And it's actually, I'm in the suburb of Syracuse. And so this road basically connects, I'm in Liverpool, New York. This road basically connects the suburb of Liverpool to Syracuse. So there's very high traffic. And so we live literally on the street. So there's 10 feet of lawn and then the road. And so not very safe for people, kids to trick or treat. So I've been here, I think almost 20 years now. My son was 6 when we moved here, and he's 26. So we've been here 20 years, and I think we've gotten 2 trick-or-treaters in 20 years, and not in the same year. So 18 years of 0 and then a couple odd years. And it's funny, we didn't have candy earmarked for Halloween, but we scrounged up some stuff we had in there.
I was going to ask.
But we weren't even expecting the one, because we never get them. So that'll tell you. I'm sort of the opposite, where I live on too busy of a street. Now we have something called the Nationals here, guys, and that's like not a card show, but a car show with like hot rods and old antique cars. And for that show, this road is like a main thoroughfare, and they go ripping up the road and doing burnouts. And I'm not a car guy, other than it's got to get me to point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not my favorite week. It's not a whole week. It's not my favorite 4 days. It's usually Thursday through Sunday. Sometimes it's even hard to get into my own driveway just with all the traffic. So, yeah, it's crazy. I remember, funny story, one year the Sports Card National, was the same week that they call the cars that show that's here, the Nationals.
Interesting.
Plural. So the Sports Card National was in Chicago one year, the same week that the Car Nationals were here locally in Syracuse. And so I got to go to that and avoid the Car Nationals and the headache that presents to us. And my wife's like, yeah, thanks for leaving me to myself during national weeks here. So funny story, but not a fun time unless you're in the cars. And people will sit up along and down the street, guys, in lawn chairs. It's a big spectacle. And it's crazy. It's not my thing, but some people enjoy that. Nothing wrong with that. Just like we enjoy sports cards, and some people, the car folks would probably think we're crazy. So I guess, to each their own, as they say.
Well, it's funny. We're in Racine, Wisconsin, and in fact, one of the things that my wife liked about the new house was we have a little free library, and so we're a house of readers. My wife's big into books. We're big into cards. So just a couple days ago, we got permission. I said, what'd be really cool is if we put little packs of cards in there. Like, so we not only are there the books, but we always see kids out there. Maybe some 15, 20 cards and little packs, and that'll be kind of fun way for us to kind of share not just the free books, but also some cards. Maybe we can get some more kids interested in collecting, and you never know what'll spark that bug.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great idea, and right, it's not going to hurt anybody. If they don't want it, they don't have to take it. If it piques their interest, and you never know where those random act of kindness goes. Right, you never know who receives them, what it leads to. And it may seem like a simple thing, but it's like a ripple, right? Enough of those small ripples turn into a bigger one. And so love to hear that. Piggy, going into that for you, Porter, you obviously collect with your fellow classmates or kids in your school. Is that a big thing? Is it a lot of Pokemon? Is it Pokemon? Is it 50-50? How the kids that you go to school with, how would you describe them as? Are they collectors, sports, Pokemon, both? How would you?
Yeah, so I feel like I'm in a minority group at school when it comes to collecting sports cards, per se. I mean, there are a couple kids in my grade who collect sports cards, but I don't really see anybody else at my school who does. But Pokemon, I would say, is bigger. A couple of my friends collect Pokemon, and I just feel like that would be more popular than sports cards in a school standpoint.
Yeah, I would definitely say it feels like you go to a kid's birthday party or something, maybe they get something Pokemon related. More times than not, that's what they get versus the sports cards. Even the kids that aren't deep into Pokemon, it feels like they have an idea of what it's about, and they clearly know about it. I think, certainly with Pokemon, you're going to attract boys and girls, where I think with sports cards, right, wrong, or indifferent, it seems like it does attract more of the young men. And, we see that at shows too. There are some shows that are just Pokemon, some that are sports cards. Our buddy runs the Madison Pokemon show, and it's got a much diverse, much more inclusive environment, I think, for both boys and girls, where, sports cards, if you're not into sports, or maybe you don't have a dad or a brother or somebody get into it, it might just be some of the young men.
Yeah.
Do you feel like Pokemon? Well, let's start with this. Pokemon's really blown up. I don't know anything about it. You know, I know I'm a show dealer. I've had people say, "God, it's a moneymaker. You should carry it." I don't like carry. I'm only speaking for myself here. I don't like carrying something that I don't have a passion for or not knowledgeable enough. Like if I ever did it, it would strictly be a money grab, and that's not my style. At 53 years old, I'm not, you don't change your style too much, maybe a little bit here and there, but so it's not my thing. If I joke that maybe if I ever opened a store again, which I don't have plans to, but if I ever happen to do that, I'd have someone kind of come in and stock that or run that kind of section for the store. But I like, again, speaking for me, I'm a sports guy, so I'm watching sports. I'm attending live sporting events, right? I like, when that production on the field, right, that performance on the field translates to the hobby, and I know we shouldn't hobby just for dollar signs, right? But that is a factor, right? When we pull something, most of the first question you hear is like, what's that worth? Or what's that going? So it's part of the hobby, like it enough. And I always joke with, with folks in a playful sort of way. I'm like, how many home runs did Charizard hit last night? Right. So that's my take, but like you said, it's a huge thing. And I think that's a great point you made too, Zach, is maybe it is more where it's open to females than the sports card hobby. Although I will say we've seen a lot of strides even on that side of the aisle as well. But maybe it's more of an easier entryway, if you will.
Yeah, I think too, the positive side could be, I don't, and again, you talked about how an athlete's performance can really bring in a fan. Last season the Bears did really, really well, and so it was easier to collect. Sometimes harder to find those Caleb Williams cards, where it wasn't hard to find a Trubisky card. But maybe on the Pokemon side, you don't have as much, I don't want to say flipping, but that impulse buy. If somebody has a 4 home run game, all of a sudden their cards are worth $25, $30 more than they normally would be. I don't think Pokemon would have that outside of like new releases. Something's new, it's going to be popular, but I bet you don't see that. What do we want to say? Maybe like forecasting or prospecting that you do with sports cards, where it's insane. Even if an athlete passes away, all of a sudden it's like, the price of the cards go up. And so it can be very interesting. In fact, right now, Murakami, right? If we wanted to find a base Murakami card as White Sox fans, it's a little bit more than we're used to.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Someone's at my door. I've got to get that. Be right back.
Iron Sports Cards is your #1 source for all your PSA and other grading submissions. Their elite status improves turnaround times. Heck, they even provide the card savers. Their chat rooms provide updates on all your submissions. They also offer wax options and single cards to cover all the bases. Check them out on Facebook at Iron Sports Cards Group or on the web at ironsportscards.com, or even give them a call at 1-877-IRON-PSA. Rob's got you covered.
Sports Card Nation has returned.
So I'll ask you this, Porter. You said like Pokemon's fairly popular in your school. Is it? Do you do it? Is it something you thought about, or it's just not your thing?
I've had family who's done it. Like my cousin, he does Pokemon a little bit. I think it's fallen off for him though as he's gotten older. But I've never really had a thought in doing it. I mean, sometimes if somebody collects Pokemon, I'll definitely have a look at their collection if they offer that to me, because it's interesting to see what other people are collecting. But yeah, I've not really had an itch, if you will, to collect Pokemon at all.
Yeah, even if we've gone to a show and there's Pokemon dealers or cards, it's not drawn to you. I think because Porter started really loving sports and the history of baseball, like Jackie Robinson, looking back at all these old Bear football games. And I think that is part of what drives you to collect. There's just not that for Pokemon. You can't go back and feel those moments you had watching that player. But yeah, it is interesting when you see a Pokemon collector and a sports card collector. They're like talking at each other, like they're really excited with what they have, especially if it's at a party or something, and they're speaking a different language, but the collecting gene is there, so there's that commonality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm always mindful to be like whether Pokemon, which it's not my thing, I'm still respectful the fact that it is, right? Just like sports cards may not be their thing. What we're dealing with here, I'm sure it's happening in other places other than Syracuse, is like some of the shows, it's kind of 50-50 sports card dealers to Pokemon dealers. And, the collectors are kind of complaining because they're saying, half the show's not for me. And that's on both sides, 50-50. So we're starting to see more what they call PokeFest here, which is a show that's all geared towards Pokemon and Pokemon collectors and maybe a little comic books, but you won't see sports cards there. But we haven't really done that exclusively on the sports card side. And so some people are complaining like, hey, if the Pokemon folks can have their own show, why can't we do that in sports cards? And it's starting to occur. I know one dealer he isn't doing it necessarily like make it 100% sports cards, but because of the PokeFest shows, he's trying to like limit how many Pokemon dealers are there. So it's not, so those who do collect sports cards, they don't feel like it's a wasted trip or it's only half a show in a sense. So we're seeing that little bit. I think both parties get along, but there's some, I don't know if resentment's the right word, but it's getting a little competitive as far as, hey, I want to come to the show and see more of what I want to trade or purchase rather than have half the show be where I have to walk by a table because it's not for me, right? A Pokemon person's going to walk by my table, guys, and a sports card guy is going to walk by a Pokemon dealer table and maybe stop at me. So it's hard because you want to, you don't want to, the hobby shouldn't be exclusionary, but it is in a way it's two different hobbies. So it's such a fine line, right? That you don't want to talk out of both sides of your mouth. In other words, you don't want to say, hey, the hobby's for everyone, whatever you collect, and then start alienating one side over the other potentially. And it's tough, but go ahead. Yeah.
No, it's interesting that you say that because we're in a couple group chats with people that, run shows or they attend, they're vintage collectors. So they, how vintage collectors feel about modern product. And, it's funny. I never go to a show expecting that every table is going to have something for Porter and myself. I mean, when I go to a show, we usually look for bargain boxes, dime boxes, dollar boxes. But
I sometimes look for like memorabilia tables.
Yeah.
Get some cheap PC items.
Yeah. And so I don't expect all the tables to be for us. In fact, sometimes when we go to a show, there may only be 5 or 6 dealers that actually have bargain boxes or stuff that would be in kind of our budget range. And I don't have any ill will against, the high-end collectors. Sometimes it's cool to look at. Probably the same thing with the Pokemon. You go in there and you see it. It may not be for you. In fact, we've changed a little bit of the card shows we go to. We used to always go to one show every single month. It was a monthly show. And we just kind of noticed that not that it was getting to be a little bit more Pokemon, but it was becoming really, really new product. And it just kind of felt like the same stuff over and over.
Yeah.
So we found a smaller show that's actually closer to where we live. It's maybe about 50 tables, but I would say it's all sports cards. And
well, there are a few Pokemon.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you're right. There are a few, but it's like 90-10. And I would say every table probably has good variety of bargain box stuff to wax to higher end stuff and even vintage. And it's a slower pace show. I think that's a big change.
Yeah.
Since the last time we talked. We really liked going to some of the larger shows in the Wisconsin area. And now as we've hobbied for a little bit, some of that's the slower pace. Clearly we still love the national, but I don't know. It just feels like we can have a little bit more time and feel a little bit more relaxed instead of that go show.
Yeah, I get that. I hear you. And, the national, like I phrase it as the Super Bowl of the hobby, right? It's once a year. It's 5 days. And so we ramp up for it. But if there was 15 nationals a year, I still probably only go for the one, right, or the 4 or 5 days, right? And then that, you know, sort of the bloom, when you do anything too much, right, the bloom comes off the rose, as they say. You don't appreciate, you almost take it for granted. You know, when I heard there was a rumor, guys, that they wanted to do 2 nationals a year, and I'm like, no, I know people will attend it. I'm not arguing the financial aspect of it, but we don't need to, right? We have enough other shows and regional shows in Burbank and Madison and more closer to you. And we got the Culture Collision in the South, the Dallas Card Show. We've got a lot of other big shows, East Coast National and White Plains. And now, you know, I know they're sort of different animals, but they have enough similarities to put them in the same basket. You got the Fanatics Fest now as well. So I think there's enough big shows that we don't need 2 nationals. And I think if they ever did it, I think it would hurt each show. I think they would hurt both nationals. And the only way I would support 2 nationals, I'll get your guys' take on this. If one, you know, if they're both good, and I know it's in your backyard, so to speak, but I get the one in national or Chicago, and Chicago's kind of become everyone's favorite venue and place, and sort of, you know, right in the middle of the United States, so it's sort of fair to everybody. But if they ever went to 2, I would say they both can't be in Chicago, and the other one should be on the East or West Coast, and it should alternate. So in other words, if you're doing 2 nationals a year, one's always in Chicago, one on the East Coast, and the following year, one always in Chicago and the other on the West Coast, and then alternate. And that I still don't really want 2 nationals. But I'm more apt, not that they're asking me for my 2 cents, but I could sign off on that before I just say just 2 nationals wherever or both in Chicago.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? And that's, you know, I know that's a lot closer for you than for me with Chicago.
So sort of like you, I would be opposed to 2 nationals a year, but I would be fine to do like the alternating cities or states or whatever. That I think would get a little bit more variety of visitors, because not everybody can come to the National every year.
We're fortunate, John. As you mentioned, we're about 60 minutes away from the National in Chicago. So the first year we went, which I think would have been 4 years ago now. Yeah. You know, we went one day. Everyone said that's not going to be enough time because it is a 5-day show. And then last year we went 2 days, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
But we can drive there and drive home. You know, if it was, even when it was in Cleveland, we wouldn't have gone, but that's just not really how we collect. It's out of convenience being so close here. But I agree with you. I like having the main one in Chicago. But, you know, you kind of go where the dealers are and the collectors are. From what I've heard, a lot more dealers are on the East Coast. So it tends to have a little bit more of an East Coast bias.
Yeah.
And then maybe you do have something, you know, that helps some of the folks out on the West Coast. I don't know if it's in Vegas or Denver. But, you know, it takes a while to build up some of those things. But at the end of the day, dollars and cents usually speak loudest. And if they can pack an arena and the dealers see the benefit, because they got to see that there's a lot of people coming to this. I'm sure, and we met some of them, dealers, I mean, their whole year. What is that, the Singles Club? I mean, that's their show. And, you know, they wait all year. And so if you're a dealer, can you do 2 or 3 of those Super Bowl type shows? And it's kind of that quality versus quantity. You know, everybody's going to be there for 5 days, and you can maximize it. And it gets all the athletes there and the celebrities and the autographs. We met Dwight Gooden in the parking garage last year. So that was really cool for me. I know you as a Mets, like I recognized it right away, and it was like, no way, you know? So, you know, you're going to be splitting all that stuff up as well. So I mean, sure, if they need to do something regionally, but I think you have the one main one in Chicago, and selfishly, we would like.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with the Chicago one. Now, full disclosure, it does cost me a little more because it's 14 hours to drive, so it's not really drivable. So I'm going to need round-trip airfare. Then I usually rent a car. So it's a show that costs me a little more to get to, but I get it. It's centrally located. It's sort of fair for both sides of the coast. You're right, Zach. there's really no statistics to bear it out, but I don't think too many people will argue that there's probably more dealers on the East Coast percentage-wise than the West Coast. But I like the fact that it's in sports cities. So, a city on the West Coast, think could maybe hold a national. It's never done it before, to my knowledge. I'm pretty certain of that. It's Seattle. Seattle now has a hockey team. They obviously have a baseball team with some history, with some great players coming through there as well. They had basketball during the Supersonics days, and
they might get them back now.
Yeah, I'd love to see. Now, I would try to go. It's going to be probably a little more costly, being a little further. But if it's not an every year thing, right? I'm willing to save up during the year to make to make it out there. So, and I think that would be fair for those collectors on the West Coast and maybe a little bit closer guys. And you got to be fair. I could say, have it in Atlantic City, which I don't think they're ever going to get again. But I like the Atlantic City show, guys, for the pure bias that I could drive there. Yeah. And bring more stuff and have my own vehicle and, don't have to be at the mercy of an airline when I can leave and when I have to leave. So, but you got to, if you're going to be fair, right, you got to think about both coasts, and then Chicago sort of splits the difference in the middle. So if they ever went the two nationals, I know I've already said this, but if they alternate the coastlines with the second one, if you will, and keep the other one central, I'd more have to sign off on that than just two kind of close to each other, just at two different times.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So guys, you talked about going to shows. When you go to your show, do you go in with a list of what you're looking for? Like, what's the plan of attack, or you just kind of what you like, something hits you? I know bargain boxes are a big thing too. I like them as well. Kind of, what's your approach when you walk into the showroom?
I sort of have a list when I go to shows. Like, if I'm trying to finish a set, I'll usually try and find and just chip away some at that set. And then, like you said as well, sometimes I just don't have a list and I know what I like and I'm just finding what I'm finding. And that, to me, usually turns out the best, because then I can open my horizon and get other things that I probably wouldn't have expected to get if I had a list of what I was getting in mind. So yeah, that's my take. Yeah,
so Porter tries to collect the Topps flagship set every year. Usually he'll get a little wax at first, this is my proud dad moment. He was trying to collect these sets just from ripping wax, and he quickly learned that the budget doesn't necessarily always get you there. So between trading on Trading Card Database and then really, going in and finding somebody's 10-cent 2026 Topps cards, and whether it's TCDB on my cell phone or we'll print off a list on before we go, he can kind of check things off. What my list is actually in Porter's head, because he is so good at remembering what cards we have. So if I go to a show, normally I look for Frank Thomas, Carlton Fisk cards. When I first got back in the hobby, our big project was getting all the base cards for Frank, Carlton Fisk, Bo Jackson, a lot of the cards that I had missed. We got caught up on that. So now it's a lot of newer product with maybe some of the older players. And I'll usually just be like, hey, Porter, do we have this? And he'll look at it, and 9 times out of 10, I'll say, yeah, or no. And usually 99% of the time he's right. What it is an interesting thing that I started doing, and it kind of started with the 1985 Bears. So a few years ago, I don't know if we were doing this project when we last talked to you, we wanted to get the rookie card for every prominent player on the 1985 Bears, -1. We knew we were not going to get Walter Payton's rookie card, but we did go through and get everybody else. In fact, we put it in a cool frame. It's right over there, but it's packed up still through the move. And then what that kind of did was started this project of really looking at rookie cards for kind of my era, like your Eric Davis, your Greg Maddux, your your guys like that. And so we had a lot of fun either through trades or going to shows and picking those out. And then we've sort of continued to progress. Like sometimes you find a box of cards and there's Joe Thomas rookie cards in there, or Eric Berry. Football players that obviously Joe Thomas is in the Hall of Fame, but a lot of guys that aren't going to get there, but it's cool to get the rookie card. And so then now we have boxes specifically for rookie cards alphabetically through the sports. And that's been a really fun project for us when we're going out there, because a lot of it's inexpensive base cards, but they mean a lot to us. And so it's pretty cool to find those. And then some of the other cool things you've been doing, let's see, the Tommy John and Ray Guy Topps run.
Yeah. So I collect sort of obscure players, if you will, players that normally people wouldn't collect at all. So now that we're fully moved, I'm going to try and get a Tommy John, Ray Guy, and Jan Stenerud. Two of those guys are special teamers. They're Topps from. And Jim Abbott, if I don't already have it, which I probably...
You're getting close on the Abbott.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, those aren't bad guys in their own right? Ray Guy's in the Hall of Fame, arguably the best punter to ever do it. Tommy John is one of those guys. He's on that bubble.
Yep.
People can make an argument for him, guys, and against them. And some people say just because he has the surgery named after him, he almost should be
contributor
in the Hall of Fame. Alone on that. And, no one will argue that he was a very, very good pitcher, excellent pitcher. And if he ever does get in, I don't think there'll be a lot of people, that up in arms. People might say, man, that lowers the bar a little bit. But I believe, I don't have it in front of me, he's not that far from 300 wins.
No.
And I don't know if we're going to see another 300 game winner the way pitchers are used today, as you guys probably well know. So I wouldn't really argue against them. And so I'm not, there's a potential someday we're talking about Tommy John Hall of Famer, but even without that, he's still not a bad guy to collect. Obviously his cards are very affordable. And again, Ray Guy, no one's crashing the turnstiles to buy punter cards. But if they were, he'd be number one on the list because he's the greatest punter of all time.
Yeah.
So, and Jim Abbott is just an inspirational player and person. And he's still, if you look into what he's still doing, he's still working in baseball in some facets. And I know he does speaking engagements and tells the young folks, don't let anything tell you no or that you can't. And he's the perfect example of someone who can say that and has got the goods to back it up. As he was an All-American in high school, he was an All-American in college, and a heck of a pitcher in the big leagues. And that's missing a hand where he'd have to switch the glove after releasing the ball. So I couldn't do that with two hands, and he's doing it with one. So. Yeah. Again, three great guys. And I think that shows, Porter, to me, it shows that you think about stuff like that, like why him and why them. And that's always important. And, it's easy to collect, Ronald Acuna Jr. or guys like that are, big name players, even Mike Trout as he's on the back nine. But to look at those guys a little less prominent, but still have stories and still very important to the fabrics of their sport, right? You can't really tell the story of football without Ray Guy, and the story of baseball without Tommy John and Jim Abbott. And so regardless of the HOF after their name or not, right, they're very important people. And still relevant in the game. Like I said, Jim Abbott's still involved in baseball. Tommy John, I know coached a little bit after his career was over. And we talk about Tommy John all the time. Maybe not in the way he'd like, but when a pitcher needs that surgery, right? He was one of the first to get that revolutionary surgery at the time, which now is like getting your appendix out.
It's a rite of passage for most pitchers. You have to have it.
Yeah, it's a rarity when a pitcher doesn't have it.
John, you had said something where it tells the story of the game. It kind of reminds me a good friend of ours, Greg Clark, who does a lot of collecting. We got him a Mitch Trubisky autographed rookie card, and he said, I've wanted one of these. I need one for my collection. And because he said it's part of the Bears history. Yeah. You can't tell the history of the Chicago Bears, good or bad, without that moment in time. And so he wanted to have one, and we were glad we were able to get one for his birthday. But it really made you think, when you collect some of these players, even if they're prospects that don't turn out, which as White Sox fans, we've seen a lot of that over the last handful of years. There's still those memories. It tells that story of that, that time frame of when you're a fan. And so it's funny that you mentioned that, because we look at it the same way. It's all part of that story.
I think it's important, and I'm glad you're sort of keeping, I don't know if I'll call it a tradition, but keeping that aspect of the hobby alive, and others do it too. But I think we need to see more of that, like just, collect what you like, and not always, and for a reason and for a purpose, not always just dollars and cents. And I get that, again, I get that part of it. I can't say that as a dealer. I'd be hypocritical, but it's got to be more than that. And I have people come up to my table and will ask for certain players that I'm probably not going to have out in the showcase, but they might be in one of my boxes that I can pull out and, sell it or give it to them in many cases, and that sort of thing. So I think it's important because, it's easy to collect the big names, right? But that doesn't tell the whole picture. Those are the big chapters, but all the rest of the chapters are filled in by all those other guys. And especially when you collect a team, like if you mentioned your friend Greg Clark with the Bears, right? That whatever you want to say about Mitch Trubisky, right? He's part of the Bears history.
Yeah.
If someone writes a book about the Bears, that draft and that pick is going to be mentioned. And he wasn't, all his years there weren't bad ones. So there's people forget about that. So I get it. I love to see it. And kudos to you guys for taking that angle. Awesome catching back up with Zach and Porter. And I tell you what, 4 years ago, Porter sounds like he is. He's 4 years older. He's a teenager now, and just a very smart kid, and being raised right. Kudos to Zach and Mom, there. And, we talk about the future of the hobby, right? I was that 7-year-old kid way back when in 1979, right? And I say it all the time. We need that next generation to carry that torch and baton forward, right? Do things the right way and make the hobby continue to be strong and maybe even get better, right? There's always room for improvement. So Zach and Porter, you won't you'll be hard pressed to find two better hobby individuals who embrace community. Community embraces them. And here's the good news. That was just part one. So we'll be back more next week with Zach and Porter again. So hopefully you enjoyed today, and looking forward to that next week as well. So we're going to hear from our Hobby is the People announcer of the week, and then wrap up this week's episode.
Time for our Hobby is the People announcer of the week.
This is David Keppel. Remember, the hobby is the people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People announcer of the week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.
Say goodnight, Kane.